Hello, everybody. Hank Gross here from Mid-Hudson News, talking with Bill Fioravanti, who's the Executive Director of the Orange County Industrial Development Agency. How are you doing, Bill?
Doing well. How are you, Hank?
Good, thanks. You've been Executive Director for over a year now?
Yes, I just hit my anniversary, actually, last week.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And that's when we saw the reorganization of the agency. And for those people who aren't familiar with what an IDA does, why don't you tell them, before we get into any of the nitty-gritty about the Orange County agency, what the IDA does?
No, I appreciate that because there's a lot of, I think, misunderstood, facts or details around the IDA. It's actually a very narrow set of powers that we are given by New York State to attract and businesses, help existing businesses expand here. There are basically three things. There's a sales tax exemption. So in Orange County, you pay 8.125% sales tax on building materials, on furniture and fixtures, on equipment and such. For a project like this, we can give you an exemption on that. There's a mortgage recording tax of 1.05% on the principal of a commercial mortgage. We can exempt that for a project that we want to attract. And lastly, there's property tax abatement. That's the big megilla that everyone talks about. PILOTs, which stands for payment in lieu of taxes, which instead of being assessed the normal way and getting a new tax bill every single year, in order to attract a certain company or an industry sector here, we can phase in their new taxes. No one gets a check from the IDA. No one's taxes ever go down. It's just if they're going to improve a property to build, say, a factory and create 250 jobs, their taxes are going to go up each year, their property taxes. We will phase those in over, say, 5, 10, 15 years.
Right.
That's exactly what the IDA does. Why do we do it? To attract the kinds of industry sectors we want. I'm trying to be forward-thinking and bringing sectors and companies that will be viable in the future, but attract quality jobs for our local residents. That's the idea.
And there are certain sectors that are allowed and others that aren't, correct?
So basically the IDA is governed by, each IDA in New York State is governed by its own UTEP, and that's an acronym for Uniform Tax Exemption Policy, UTEP, and every IDA is required by New York State, and those that, the departments that govern us, the authorities budget office there, the Office of State Comptrollers, were closely watched by that. They've required that each IDA has a UTEP and that it's reviewed and amended periodically. Ours was last updated in June of 2019, prior administration, but they actually updated it to basically a UTEP, I'll clarify, outlines what a particular IDA gives out for incentives or offers to people to apply. Of course, they have to be approved and go through a public hearing process and all that. But what types of incentives, or those that I listed, at which level, which types of businesses they've received. For example, the IDA in 2019 de-emphasized warehouse distribution, which I think would make a lot of people happy because there are a lot of warehouses coming. It's questionable how much we need to incentivize that. So that went from a 10-year pilot down to a 6-year that companies like that could apply for. They also de-emphasized hotels, so that went down to a 4-year pilot. A lot of people don't realize that. They continued at that time to maintain an emphasis on manufacturing because typically economic developers and municipalities, counties and such, want to attract manufacturing. Of course, as a nation, we're trying to reshore a lot of manufacturing jobs that went overseas. They are typically better jobs that require more skills and more training and therefore pay higher. They tend to be a little bit more sustainable in the sense that they stick around a little bit more. They have a bit of a more installed base here and operations. So we are continuing that to emphasize again manufacturing, and we've utilized that current UTEP to attract some food and beverage manufacturing, for example. Royal Wine is a wonderful project we're attracting to the village of Goshen, and also an expansion of Milmar Foods, also known as Mac Brothers, in the town of Goshen. We're supporting them. It looks like the board is about to vote on approvals of incentives for their expansion. So those are, and the pilots that they would be offered would be 15 years because they're manufacturing. I will tell you that our board is likely going to look at our UTEP again. This new board of directors, which is a whole new group, and our new staff, new consultants. We've really cleaned house in the last year and rebuilt the agency, frankly. But we're likely going to look at that and say, how do we want to amend that policy? What do we want going forward? What do we want to attract here? And what are we going to utilize these very unique benefits? We don't want to overutilize them. What are we going to use them to actually draw here? So I look forward to that. That's our next chapter, frankly, is some of the policy revisions.
Now, at about the same time as you came on as executive director, that's when the board changed. The county legislature changed the membership of the board.
Yes, the staff is not the only change in terms of who's running this business, this agency. We have generally a new staff. We have one holdover, Kelly Riley, who was instrumental during this transition in both responding to grand jury subpoenas and inquiries by the district attorney and such, but also helping us get really restarting this engine and getting back to work. So Kelly Riley's a holdover, but two other new staff people, Marty Boras and myself, are the team. But yes, as you said, the board was completely replaced. The Orange County Legislature does not really run the IDA or govern us in any sense, but they do. We report to them monthly. Frankly, we go and report to their Economic Development Committee, but they do appoint and replace board members. That is their real power. So after the frankly, I'll call it the scandal of 18 months ago, a little longer, they eliminated the entire board and brought in a temporary board that was there from early March of 2021 until the end of the calendar year. Some of them held over, but then the legislature appointed some new members. We just in September got our final 2 appointments, and we are full at, per our bylaws, 7 members for our IDA board. But people that came from all walks of life. We had a president of Burke Catholic School. We had a former detective. We have a SUNY Orange professor, a residential real estate professional, a retired gentleman who owned a title company, so some knowledge of real estate in that regard. We have someone who's a specialist in investments now, which is helping us as we're investing some of our fund balance in CDs. And a labor leader in Dean Tamburri. And our chairman, of course, is the one with probably the most, by far, economic development experience, Michael Torelli. He works for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. He worked for the Orange County Partnership. Right. He ran the Empire Zone and the regional district for Empire State Development here. He's a tremendous chairman. Dean Tamburri is our vice chair from, as you said, Local Laborer 17. He's been a great addition. We really have a tremendous team, and again, really reinvented this, and we've already been revamping some policies and certainly changing our processes, our approvals of finances to uncoil and some of what was the malfeasance that happened here, and to make sure that it never happens again, frankly.
Now, you mentioned the scandal. Is that all done now? Or, to your knowledge, is there any more investigating going on?
I will tell you, most of this is discussed in executive session, so I certainly won't give any details. But our board has been working with our new general counsel, Susan Katzoff of Bousquet Holstein. It's a well-respected firm, actually out of the Syracuse area, with an expertise in public finance like IDAs. That's all they do. One of her litigators has been working with our board about possible further legal action. I can't comment further on that, but I will promise that if there is no other action taken, it's only because the board just outweighs the cost and, not to mention, frankly, the continued PR hits we've taken because of what was done here, unfortunately. So there is further discussion. It's not been finalized yet. That's something I continue to report to the legislature. They're interested in that. But basically, you could have seen the end, I will tell you, of any sort of legal action or investigations. I don't know of any other agencies, though. We and the county legislature sent letters to various jurisdictions and law enforcement agencies and such, even at the federal level, to say we're here to cooperate if you want to look into what was what took place here.
Now, in the year since you've started, you've had a lot of accomplishments.
Yeah, I'm proud of what we've done. I was named the permanent CEO in November of 2021. I had been working probably 7 or 8 months as a temporary, kind of an interim director, as you know, wearing both hats as the Director of Economic Development under County Executive Steve Newhouse. We've been very busy in that role. I think you know the gentleman who's now serving in that role.
I believe, yeah.
Yeah, I think you do, Mr. Steve Gross, so who's done a wonderful job in that regard. But I was straddling both positions. First, I may have used the term before, uncoiling some of what was in place that was really intended to hide some of the specifics around finances, costs, really a lot of money that was going out the window, really kind of hiding it from the board. We certainly changed all of that, rebuilt our financial processes. We have new consultants all around, especially our general counsel. I mentioned Susan Katzoff. We have new counsel for our bond deals, which is the other side of our house. The Orange County Funding Corporation. We're able to issue tax-exempt revenue bonds, which allow basically larger nonprofits like hospitals or higher education to handle large capital projects, to finance them cost effectively. So we have counsel for that. So we have all new attorneys. Again, completely rebuilt the organization from the inside out. But we have some great accomplishments. We went, I think the public should know, we went about 14 months without getting an application. And this is a very busy IDA. Without a company coming to us saying, we're trying to come to the area, can you help us? I think basically because we were toxic after what happened, a lot of people didn't, they want to stay away from this organization. And I think even companies were worried about associating with us. And I felt, Hank, that we really turned that around again with a completely new board, new staff, with what we were doing and reporting, being very transparent about. But we got back to work. I think that is one of the, I'll say, the assets that I bring to the table here is I've been in this line of work, locally here for 10 years now. People know me. I'm a known commodity. I worked in nonprofit for years, so I think, maybe that gives some people a sense that, I'm a decent guy and I'm not looking to go in there and do the same thing again. But we did, frankly, the month after I was named CEO, we were fortunate enough that we started to get applications rolling in, and we have a very full pipeline. We've approved incentives for a number of projects. I'd love to enumerate those for you if I could. We approved incentives for Green Thumb Industries, known as GTI. That basically is capping off a real emphasis on the cannabis sector, Hank, particularly in Warwick at the old prison site there, what used to be known as the Mid-Orange Correctional Facility. The IDA made a major investment there of $3.5 million in a few different capacities. And in part, that strategy was to double down on cannabis. We have two major cannabis manufacturers constructing at that park now. It's not really now a technology or business park. Right. Green Thumb is going to create 200 high-paying jobs there. This is life sciences. It's R&D, exactly what we want. I just toured with our chairman and some folks from the Orange County Partnership. We toured the construction site there at the Warwick Tech Park for GTI, 450,000 square feet. The building is just closed in now. They're working on the inside. That's fabulous. Sativa, another major cannabis manufacturer that between the two, and PharmaCann in Montgomery, we have 3 of the first 10 licenses for medical cannabis production. And again, while PharmaCann is in Montgomery and Hamptonburg. These other 2, Sativa and Green Thumb, are out at the Warwick Tech Park. So that's a great project for us, and that was an incentive deal that was closed by this new board of directors. We also helped Sativa. They were stopped for a while out there at the Warwick Tech Park, but we provided some incentives to get them restarted. We approved incentives for Walgreens, which is a pharmaceutical, what are they calling it? It's a very high-tech distribution center. It will actually have pharmacists and pharmacy techs on staff there, but it's a micro-fulfillment center. That's the term I was looking for. So very high-tech, a lot of robotics in there, but still 200 jobs right there, and that's in the town of Newburgh on Route 300. I mentioned Royal Wine. It's 120 jobs in the town of Goshen, major not just a wine manufacturer of Manischewitz and about 70 other labels for kosher wines, but Royal also makes Kedem, which you may know, Hank.
Sure.
It's second most popular grape juice in North America, kosher grape juice. So
And
that's
wine.
and wine. Right, exactly. So that's a wonderful project, and a couple others. I mentioned our work issuing tax-exempt revenue bonds. We actually did kind of a refinance job for Mount St. Mary College for some capital construction they're doing in the city of Newburgh. And lastly, this new board authorized incentives for Convergent Energy. That is actually a battery storage project in Warwick, in the village and on school district property, frankly, there, land that couldn't be used for anything else. They'll have batteries there that really help build up our renewable energy grid, frankly. So that's a neat project, and that was more about providing sales tax exemption, help the project happen, but they're looking for certainty of what their tax payments will be. Sometimes that's the purpose of them coming to the IDA. So that's another project. So we've been very busy just in the 12 months, that I talked about. We also finished off the Warwick Tech Park, our investment there. We got back because of a state grant, $3 million of our $3.5 million that we invested in the Warwick former prison there, now the Warwick Tech Park. We just launched a Shovel Ready initiative, which is really trying to replicate some of that work, where the IDA is looking to identify remaining developable properties around Orange County, taking a deep dive on that. We're working with an engineering firm, Delaware Engineering, to identify sites, to develop. Essentially, it's going to be a website where the Orange County Partnership, who markets the county for us, ourselves, municipalities, they can access property information very deep with GIS mapping and other, again, robust information. That'll be great. But the key of that project is to identify top sites where we can bring better projects here, Hank. We want to bring better sectors, again, future-ready sectors with high-paying jobs for our residents. We want to attract those, and the IDA could identify some sites that are ideal for that, but we could make some additional investments, as we did in Warwick, extend water and sewer, augment power, working with our utility companies here, bring natural gas, extending that if possible, so that we can, again, bring better projects. And frankly, the idea is to help dictate our own future rather than just taking what's coming to us.
And oftentimes, a company that's looking around to locate someplace, if you have a shovel-ready site with the infrastructure in there, you're going to rise to the top of their list.
No question, Hank. We're not going to get one of these premier projects like pharma manufacturing, or let's say, to me, the pinnacle is like an electric car manufacturer. It'd be fabulous to get that. Chip Fab, you're hearing a lot about that. Global Foundries and the Micron project in Syracuse. They know where the best sites are, believe me. They're working with New York State. They're working with corporate site selectors around the country. They know exactly where to go, and they know who's offering the incentives as well. Micron was an enormous deal, but it featured $8 billion in incentives alone.
Wow.
In incentives. So, we get clobbered for several million here of saving somebody in property taxes to help bring jobs and major economic impact. Well, they know the value in that region and the state of those kinds of jobs in the country. See, President Biden putting a lot of emphasis around tech of all sorts and advanced manufacturing. We want our part of that. So we want to ready sites for that. We want to be on the short list, as you're saying, for the state and for site selectors to have not just everything else we always boast, proximity to New York City, being smack dab in the middle of the Boston to Washington corridor, the most robust commercial corridor in the country, incredible unmatched quality of life, a great educated workforce, a diverse workforce. We have it all. Well, let's get the projects that we want that are going to be valuable to our communities and to our residents, not just for the next few years, but for decades to come. That's the idea.
Right now, with all the projects in the pipeline, approximately how many new jobs are we going to see?
Geez, just from the numbers that projects that I just named off, let me just do for a real quick math here. You're talking over 500 jobs, just there, quality jobs being produced just in those projects. And what else is in the pipeline? I mean, you're talking there's over 1,000 jobs of projects that are in the pipeline, not just for the IDA, but that the partnership and some of our municipalities are in the state are working on.
Great. Okay. Bill, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Hank. Appreciate it.
Sure, and we'll do it again.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Good.